Alright, hello. This is Mita here, doing a little watercolor test. So I have both QOR and Mijello Mission Gold brands. And one thing that people note about both of these brands is that QOR tends to move a lot in water because of their aquazole formula. It tends to push out and spread very easily. And Magellan Mission Gold and other Asian paint brands don't tend to do that. They don't include gall or any other or aquazole or anything synthetic that helps to move the paint around. So they're easier to control. They don't spread so much as try to stay in place. I liked the sound of both of these um, uh, qualities. I particularly like the sound of being able to control the paint for more controlled, detailed areas, but the spreading also seems like kind of like a fun aspect for things like more abstract backgrounds, things like that, bigger paintings. But I never really tested thoroughly the difference between the two. So since I have so many colors from both sets, I thought I'd grab any colors where I have the equivalent paint or something very close in the terms of when it comes to a few mixes here and compare them side by side. So I'm going to do this with just the water. I'm going to pre-wet this page. This is a hot press Bao Academy paper. It would be nice to also test it on like cold press, which is the more common use, but I've got a lot of this hot press I need to use, so I might test it on multiple sheets. But let's start with this one. I'm going to pre-wet that, and then I'm going to add a bit of water to each of these. Both of these re-wet very easily, so for the most part, a few colors like cobalts and things are stubborn, but I don't really need to work hard to pull up the color. But good to have them all softened up, kind of make things a little more even as well, so I don't have to scrub or anything. Now this paper's curling up a bit, so let me grab my clip, my sketchbook clip. There it is. So I don't have to keep holding it down manually with my fingers. That's good enough. All right. So, and then I'm gonna layer it one more time. I want it nice and wet. Not stopping dripping wet though. So, but since it's winter time, I do have the heater kind of blasting in the background, so things do dry a little quicker. And then after this, I may test with a drop of aquazole. I might have a little cup with water and aquazole, which is coarse synthetic oxgall, and which is supposed to be able to help all paints, like if you have a Mijello paint and it doesn't normally move that much, or just like a regular paint that's not QOR brand, like middle of the road movement, like most Western brands, I think, then this is supposed to help with that movement. And another benefit is to help slow the drying time. Both of those things they're known for. And I've tested that it does make things dry slower for sure. So we're gonna first start with, I think I want to start with the Mijello first, so I don't accidentally, I think I actually want to, maybe, do I want two different brushes? One thing I also wonder about is just how much is like this dispersal agent able to spread and mix from painting with one and then cleaning and painting from the other, and then how much gets in my dirty water that I'm cleaning my brush off from, because when you use this, you're only supposed to put in like 2 to 3 drops in a small cup of water, and that's enough for it to make a difference, you know? So as I keep dipping it, I don't know, but we're gonna try with just the Mission Gold first, just dipping it in. Okay. So there's that. Now let's try with the QOR. And we can see that moves pretty dramatically. And I know it also differs from paint to paint as well. Like this is Quin Magenta PR122, and this is known to move a lot for QOR. It's one of the ones that's especially explosive. I know they have some that don't move much at all, even with their formula. This one is Burgundy Red, PR 177 for Mijello Mission Gold. And for QOR, it's their Permanent Alizarin Crimson. Same pigment number, PR 177. And so we can see there, even with a lighter pigment load on the tip, it moves quite a lot when there's a lot of water. Let's try with the Nickel Azo Yellow, PY150. Mijello Mission Gold calls theirs Green Gold, which is an unusual name. A bit confusing. I know people don't like that. People in the West don't like that. It's confusing. That's not Green Gold. PY129 is Green Gold. Yeah. All right, let's try over here. And we can see here, it could also be that the paper is drying as well, but it's not moving as much. And since it's been a bit, I'll go ahead and wet the paper one more time so that we can eliminate that possibility. Since it stopped moving now, we want to see if that's the reason. Let's see, where did I put my brush? We're going to get another dab of paint here. It is moving a little bit more, but still not as much as the magenta and the PR177. And we'll go ahead and test that with this as well. Yeah. I think then it must be like some pigments also move a little bit easier depending regardless. So this one, the Dispersion Nickel Azo Yellow, must not move very much. This next one is a mix. So it's sap green here. And despite the very wet page, there is some light, like a dispersal ring, but the main pigment itself isn't moving that much. I mean, it is kind of making a pretty decent splotch, but it's not like this where it's becoming like a soft ring of color spreading out. So I've got two pigments here from Mijello Mission Gold. One is they're labeled sap green, which is two pigments, and it's like PG36P and PY150. And then they have another sap green that's this is there's the core sap green is PG36 and PY150 plus PR101, which is like a dirt color, one of those earth tones. And Mijello Mission Gold also has one that's PG36 and PY150 plus PBR25, which isn't PR101, but it's still like a dirt color, you know. So I'm just testing out both. Yeah. And then we've got the Viridian, which is, or phthalo green blue shade slash Viridian hue. I want to test over here too, where it's more dry now. And you can see, like, in areas where it's still, it's got just a slight sheen from a slight dampness. If it's damp but not wet, it's not going to spread that much, regardless. And then over here, so I think one thing I feared with these spreading ones is, like, will it make it hard to control and do tight areas and like feathering soft edges of detail. And I feel like it can be, maybe it'll be harder, like there can be more of a challenge there in some situations, but overall if you control the wetness of the page and the wetness of your brush and you know how it behaves, you can probably still make it behave the way that you want, even if you do need some finer control and detail. It's just going to take a bit more gumption, a bit, like, it's going to take more understanding. So we can see here, even with the heavier paint load, it's not moving as much, but it is still moving more than like the Nickel Azo Yellow, just a little bit. And here it's spreading definitely more than this sap green that they had, and more than the Nickel Azo Yellow. So we're moving on to a cerulean blue chromium for QOR. And this one's not moving a lot. I'm not surprised. I'm not going to expect that any of the heavier pigments like cobalts, the heavier granules, is going to make them less likely to move around. I got a pretty wet wet blotch in my brush here, so it looks like it's spreading more, but I don't think it's actually more spreading. So let me get a wet blotch from here as well, because I got a pretty light load. So these two, for the ceruleans, the spread is fairly comparable to each other. There's some variance from the paint load, the wetness load of the page and stuff, but you can see for both of them, they're not moving much. We're going to re-wet the page for the rest here, down here. So specific pigment matters a lot here as well. It seems like for Mijello, since they don't have anything to help with the movement at all, from paint to paint, it will probably be a bit more consistent. So the pigment doesn't matter as much because none of them are going to move very much. You know, where with QOR, some of them are really helped along. They're going to move a lot, like the magenta and the alizarin crimson, the Viridian. And then some of them are not going to move so much, the heavier ones, like the nickels, the cobalts, because the pigment itself is a bit too heavy for them to handle. This is a phthalo. I think this will probably spread a lot. Yeah, pretty. It's a finer pigment. It's a synthetic, you know, more modern pigment. Let's try it over here. I've got, I think, a heavier load than with the QOR one, but it's not spreading quite as much. Staying more in place, staying more concentrated, exactly where I placed it. Trying to put some more concentrated splotches there of the and then we've got ultramarine blue. I got a pretty wet dollop there, so I'm gonna dry it off a little bit and then do again as well. So the ultramarine blue moves a decent amount for that one. Let's try with the Mijello Mission Gold's ultramarine blue. I think they call this one ultramarine blue number 2. Because they had a thing where they used names for a lot of their pigments that, you know, because like it's like an Asian company, they're like, this seems like the right word for this color, right? Google Translate, yes, the shade is correct, but Western paint communities, they take the words very seriously. They're like, the shade may be similar, but it's not gonna mix the same because the pigment is different. So they got that feedback and they made number 2 versions of a bunch of stuff where they're like, now the number 2 version is what you think it is supposed to be. That and ultramarine blue number 2. So we see that this one does spread more than the cobalt did. The cerulean chromium stuff. For both of them, but it does. I feel it does spread more with the QOR. Alright, dioxazine. I think this one is also a super spreader for the QOR. Maybe not. Oh, wait. I guess it's not like the magenta, but it does bloom out a decent amount. And we're going to try it here as well on this side. And this one is also comparable between the two. They spread out fairly similarly. Alright, so last one, this is a Payne's Gray for QOR. Let's see, I'm gonna go to the top because we've run out of space on the QOR page. Let's see, where's my brush? My big flat. I'm gonna go back up here. Sorry guys, they probably don't need it up there. I'm going to... Alright, so the Payne's Gray is a super spreader, and it makes some sense, I think. Well, actually, so they have PB15-3, the PB19, and the PBK7. I haven't tested the PBK7 or the PB19 here to see how much it spreads, but the PB15-3, it spread, but not a crazy amount. It was kind of middling. It was in the middle. It spread more than these small sap green and nickel azos and the cobalt, but not like the magentas and things like that. I made the pretty rainbow so ugly with this. That's okay. And then this one, they don't have, like everybody has a different formula. This is not even their Payne's Gray. This is their indigo over here. but their indigo is kind of weird. It's not very blue for an indigo, and their actual Payne's Gray is more blue than their indigo, so I feel like this is closer to Payne's Gray or a neutral tint for them. And you see that one barely moves at all. This one does use like a PBK. I believe this also uses PBK 7, and I think it has PB. I don't remember, but we can see that it depends on the pigment specifically, but overall is true. A lot of the core ones will move pretty wildly, but a lot of them basically think heavier ones, cobalts, nickels, maybe cadmiums as well. Like maybe I could test that. They're gonna stay in place a lot more, closer to their peers. Mijello Mission Gold, fairly consistent overall. They're not gonna move around no matter which pigment all that much. They're gonna stay more concentrated and stay in place. But some of them will disperse a little bit more or a little bit less depending on the pigment in the same way. It does seem like the PR122, even here you can see it's spread out more compared to the others. Let me also do a few more dabs because I didn't do that many. So I'm pretty sure I wet this page. Yeah, I did. Kind of. A lot of those are actually dry, so let me cross those out. Yeah, beautiful cross out. But like slowly, I think I did actually hear someone once complain or say that they felt their experience with Mijello Mission Gold was that it looks like it stays in place at the beginning, but over a long period of time, as it slowly dries, it does spread bit by bit. It kind of creeps up unsuspectingly. So you think it's all set in place, but then you walk away, you come back and check the dryness, and once it's fully dry, things have creeped up farther than you expected it to based on how it looked in the first minute or two. So maybe I'm seeing that here. Maybe I could compare with like a third brand, but my main brands here, I have a set of QOR, a set of Mijello, and a set of Holbein. And Holbein is supposed to also work similarly to Mijello. Maybe I could test the Holbein as well to kind of see. We're gonna let that dry. You know what? This was also on a dry spot. I really did not wet this area very well. We're gonna go over that. And drop it in one more time. Alright, so we're gonna let that dry and come back to it. Now I have some cellulose paper. This is B paper, but not the one that has a bit of cotton in it. It's just pure cellulose. It is supposed to be like thicker, so it's a nice thick quality paper that would be good for non-watercolor stuff. And we'll see. They say on the cover it's also for watercolor, but we know the truth. But we'll go ahead and see here the difference as well. Or it's a nice big space. I want to see if there's much difference, and also it just gives me a lot more room to test. I'm gonna also have to clip this one down. All right. First, we're gonna wet the whole page evenly to kind of let the whole thing get evenly damp. Let it soak into the fibers, and then we're gonna re-wet it right before we add the paint. All right. Where's my clip? Here it is. Maybe I can clip it on the side here. All right. So maybe I will actually do this from the side, because then we can also include a bit of Holbein in here. So would have been good to draw the lines beforehand, but here we are. We're gonna put Holbein here. Beautiful, beautiful. Excellent handwriting. Mijello Mission Gold, and then QOR. All right. Now, let's go ahead and use the brush to make it wet again. Ooh, I did not let that dry at all. I'm an impatient painter. It's not a very good trait for a watercolorist. I do use the hairdryer sometimes. Oh yeah, and then maybe I will try this at the end. We'll see. All right. So we're gonna wait. Let me grab my Holbein set. So we've got here. They do have a Quin Magenta in here. Quin Magenta, Holbein. Gonna get a thicker load as well for some dark little dots. Yeah. I'm gonna do the same here. It's pretty wet. It is, the paper is dipped a little right in the middle here, so I want to put some of the paint on the side too where it's more dipped upwards. Yeah, we can see here where the water is not pooling, that these also stay in place. This is where there's a lot of water, so it's no surprise. And then here we've got the QOR again with their super spreader, permanent magenta. All right, I think, do we have I don't have PR 177 for Holbein, but I do have they don't have a single pigment yellow in the entire 60 color tube Holbein set. Can you believe that? I still can't believe it. It's crazy. And you know what? A lot of the colors in there, not light fast, even when they mark it as light fast. Anything with PY74, throw it out. Maybe not throw it out, but throw it out. Because it is not light fast. I don't care what they say. They all went bad. All of them. Everyone. Every single mix with that color. It went ornery after 4 months in the window. I don't live in Florida or nothing, so it's not even that hot. Okay. We'll try a few random paints here. Like Quin Scarlet. Well, it dries very quickly, right? It is a cellulose. So let me brush it again. Okay, there we go. I know this isn't very scientific. A little scientific, but it could be more. Alright, so that's Quin Coral. They call theirs Scarlet, I think. PR209. Then we've got this burgundy red. This one's spreading a lot for them. This is also where it dips though, like I said. And this one's spreading a lot more. And we're gonna get the, oh, they have a cadmium. They have a few cadmiums. So we'll see about these. Kind of expected that they wouldn't move much. We're gonna try some of their oranges. I'm just picking random colors now. A lot of their colors are mixes as well, so they're not the best to be able to compare side by side. This is one of their fluorescent paints, like bright violet or something. Let's try one of their single pigment earth tones, burnt sienna. This is where we run out of water again. Yeah, I'm gotta say, cellulose paper not the best to be testing this kind of thing. Yeah, we're just gonna ignore that. Okay. So let's try that again, burnt sienna. And let's grab the burnt sienna off here too. No, not that one. Burnt sienna. Oh, oh, I'm sorry. That's not Holbein. That's not Holbein. That's Mijello's, and it's not even their single pigment. It's not their single pigment. This is their single pigment. Burnt sienna number 2. All right. Yeah, that one's not moving much. We can see that these are ignoring that side. That these stayed in place, but still spread a little bit. Yeah, we're ignoring those. Just ignore those. Let's try the Bright Opera, which is the only fluorescent paint of theirs that I have. Yeah, those stay in place. I'm gonna expect that the cobalt turquoise is not gonna move much. Cobalt turquoise hue they call it, but it is some kind of heavy metal, so I'm pretty sure it is some kind of cobalt of some kind. Another cobalt green deep. They have some gorgeous cobalts in their their single pigment set. Prussian blue. Indian throne blue. That one spreads quite a lot. Interesting. Phthalo green yellow shade, that one's staying in place. And I'm gonna try PO73. They call it red orange, but this is pure orange. That one doesn't move much. Alright, now let's do more of the Holbeins. Oh, they're weird little mixes. I don't want to be mean to Holbein, but I'll be honest. Overall, the brand is kind of disappointed me. I was hyped for it, and it's my least favorite of the professional brands that I currently own. Not that I own a huge amount. Let's try one of their pastel colors, Gray of Gray. It's not moving much. Let's try their Prussian blue. And then their Quin Violet. Alright, now let's get back to this side and do more of the cores. If I do it less concentrated, the sap green does start to move more. It does seem like some of them, like in more diluted concentrations, they'll spread a lot more compared to when they're really heavy. Because you'll see that really thin, fine line of just the barest tint of color spread out really far, like almost like an oil slick. But then at the center is the actual true color, like the real pigment, the grains of color, the pigment itself. It'll do like the spider thing when it spreads out and create its own separate shape. So we can see this edge is pretty dry, but when it's in the water, this one does spread a little bit. Okay, phthalo. Yeah, this phthalo, it does move more when it's quite wet. So, this page, not so good to judge because of the uneven wetness, how quickly it dries, so you can't really as easily compare side by side, as well as the fact that with the warping right in the middle, here the dip is causing some colors to spread even more than they normally would, so that makes it a little bit difficult. But it was nice to have a second comparison and test out how it works with plain paper. The paper did handle it okay. Like, you don't want to do a masterpiece on it. It's really floppy and feels like it'll fall apart. But not bad. It's not like, it's much better than like printer paper. So we come back to this, and it's basically dried. And we can see here, there's colors like the Payne's Gray, Magenta, and Scarlet, and even the Nickel Azo Yellow that stayed pretty concentrated. As it slowly dried, the color did start to spread more, where with the Nickel Azo here, it stayed in place even as it dried much better. These colors all did spread a little bit as it dried very slowly, but still I think overall it stays in place much more compared to a lot of these. We saw with this that the sap green, it looks like it stays in place, but when it's much more, it might have been just that the paper was a little bit drier there. When it's much more wet, it does spread a little more. At least it has that tint ring that spreads out a decent amount. So there's that. I do want to test on some cold press if I can as well. Let's see. Where do I have some spare sheets of paper. I use this sketchbook a lot for swatching and things, as you can see. Where is, that was following a tutorial from YouTube, but I don't recall the name right now. I have most of the paper I have left in here that's not already used up is the hot press. So I'm trying to find a non-hot press, aka cold press. Let's see here. Alright. This page kind of already has stuff on it that I kind of abandoned. I'm never coming back to this, so I'm just going to use this page. This is Baohong Academy cold press paper. This is the smoother side, so maybe the rougher side would have been better. This is a clean paper, but it's a little, it kind of makes me want to use it for some things. Can't I find any better paper for this? Probably should have set it aside at the beginning. I also did tests of the water on this page as well to test like drying time and things like that. Maybe I could recycle this page and test it again. No, I'm not gonna do that. I really love to save on the paper and reuse them. Yeah, I've used up most of the pages in this, aside from there's a bunch of hot press I still haven't touched, so. A lot of mixing tests on here. Okay, how about here? Yeah, this is the one. Yeah, this is the best one we can use. It's still cold press on this side. I've used both sides of the Baohong cold press paper, both types of paper this whole time. That's how I do it in the sketchbooks and everything, so it's fine. Alright, nice and wet. We're gonna put this down as well. As for what was happening in the corners of this page, basically I was just testing out, I was trying to compare phthalo blue red shade with phthalo blue green shade, as well as seeing how warm or red-ish I could get the phthalo blue red shade if I tested it with like purples and things. So that's what that was. But enough about that. We're going to try out one more comparison here. Okay, so we're gonna do the magenta, since that's one color that I know we have all three here. There. Then we have magenta, Mijello Mission Gold. Really concentrated. And then same for Holbein. Really concentrated. Let me try again with the Mijello. Just because I wanted to test, because it seems like it was spreading more for Mijello, but I suspected it was not because it's actually more of a spreader, but just the dampness of the page. So it does seem like the dampness of the page here now that we've got a dry spot. So we're going to put in the core a few more spots here for comparison. And now what I'd like to do is test out my little Aquazole here. Okay, so I'm gonna put this in a side dish, just a little drop. And then I'm gonna pick up just a dab of that drop on the side here. I'm gonna wash it off my brush because I don't want to put the Aquazole mixed in with the paint, but I'm gonna pick up a good amount of paint from that and mix it in with this little dab of Aquazole. I feel like it's moving already just in the palette. Maybe I should have shown it on camera, but I didn't expect to see a difference like in the palette. So, but I do think I saw some weird splitting happen right on the palette as soon as I added a drop of that. Okay, so re-wetting this corner. I'm gonna pick up some of the wetness so it's not stopping wet, because that will also affect it if it's overly wet. Of course, everything will spread. I just want it to be freshly damp. All right, let's test it. Definitely see that ring thing happening here, where that only happens with QOR. I'm not sure if that's like an attractive trait to have that tint ring. But we can see here you can see now that indeed it's spreading more. Let me try to add like a concentrated drop here. Yeah, watch it go. So if you want the spread, get this shit. I shouldn't curse. Whatever. This is me. This is actually another reason. Like I said, it helps to make things dry slower. It lasts forever. You buy one, you're never gonna have to buy anymore for the rest of your life, unless you live to be 200 or something. And I also got it on like recommendation by Anna Bucchiarelli. I'm hoping I'm saying the last name right. She's a very popular watercolorist on YouTube, and she swears by this stuff because it really helps her with the lengthening the drying time. And she loves plenty of QOR colors like the dioxazine violet, and she's able to make it work for her. Like, she is a very controlled, very detailed, precise style based on the timing and everything. She uses this to prolong the drying time, and it also is going to make her paints QOR crazy, if you will, like really spreading and dispersing as in the same manner as QOR's does, as well as she does use their paints, like it's her favorite dioxazine violet. So clearly you can still get control. You can still control it well if you understand the paints very well, even with QOR's behavior. And if you have if you want to get like a paint like Mijello or Holbein, or I think Paul Rubens also acts similarly, Shinhan. But oh, I want the paint to move more. Just get this. Totally worth it. You can mix it into the paint itself if you want to experiment, so that it's in the whole solution of the paint when you pour into the tube, from the tube into the pan. I like having the option. That's the thing. Like, if you have a paint that doesn't have that already has gall in it or something, or Aquazole, and then if you want it to not move, you don't have the option to do that in those times and situations where you do want those tighter spaces, or you want to have more control or less unpredictability. But you can always add it in as you're painting or into a pan separately as you need it, and you can test and compare and see and decide what you like on your own. So I much prefer paints not bothering to include it, like especially since as well, like the gall. Yeah, I'm sure they only add like a drop or two per pan. It's not going to take up much space. It's not really taking up space, but it is kind of like, it's not a filler, but it is taking up space in the tube that could be spent on like more pigment. I'm just saying. So that, it doesn't really matter. But I think overall, the having no dispersal agent included in the paint from the beginning is the objectively better way. Now QOR, they use this. I think they use Aquazole. I'm pretty sure that's what this is, instead of gum arabic. So they don't use gum arabic as their binder. They use Aquazole. If I got this wrong, I'm pretty sure I'm remembering this right, but you correct me if I'm wrong. But if you do use since you have the Aquazole instead of the gum arabic, and that kind of helps to helps just that littlest bit more for that color purity, because gum arabic does have a color. I'm sure no matter how pure they get it, like this is, I have a bottle of gum arabic. That's a color, and no matter how little you put in and how clear your gum arabic, it's gonna have, it's gonna tint just the teeniest, tiniest, littlest bit, you know? I'm sure that's part of why their colors are so pure. And it's also what's one thing that sets them apart that a lot of people like about them. So I'm not gonna knock them for it. I have my Holbeins and my Mijellos for when I don't want any dispersing agents. But yeah, I like this experiment. I would like to also, it would be nice to test the drying time on camera too to show that, but I've already proved it to myself because I've already done the test. I accidentally gave away, you see how I use both sides of the page. I try to be very economical. I did my tests with all my timed lines, like, oh, without Aquazol, this line dried in 30 seconds, and 90 seconds it was like this, and in 50 seconds it was like this. I did all those tests, and then on the other side I had painted some little paintings for my friend, so I sent that to her, and I lost. I know, it's like, what, you sent that to her? The back is, yeah, it's fine. And so I lost that. I don't even remember if I took a photo of it before I sent it off. But I know it definitely does slow the drying time. But if you really get familiar with it and comfortable with it, the way that like Anna Bucchiarelli has done, you can really time it to have just the amount of spread and dispersal as what you want, based on how fast the page dries with this, you know? So you can get the best of both worlds. You can have it all, ladies. You can have it all. Okay, so that was the experiment. I could also test with the Holbein, I guess, like, or like show with the Holbein the Aquazol. It's gonna be the same though, you know, so Holbein is the same as Mijello in terms of they just don't bother to add a dispersal agent. So it's not really going to be different. But let's go ahead. And we're going to wet another section, another corner. I'm going to wet a few random spots here. Whichever spots are not too covered here. Alright. And then this is a Holbein. And you see it's ringing and kind of pushing things. Oh, what am I doing? Pushing things away. You can see where there's lots of water, it's going to, of course, spread a lot more. Where the water pools, yeah, really moves a lot with the more water there is. Works exactly like the core magenta now, right? I guess one other test I could do is I could see about the nickel azo, or one of the heavier ones. Nickel azo has proven itself to be fairly stubborn and not move a lot. So let's go ahead and test the Aquazol with that, with like a Libral droplet. Okay. A droplet of the Aquazol with some of Mijello Mission Gold's green gold, or PY150 as a yellow. Alright. And we're, ooh, where, I'm gonna dab this page off so I can move on. I don't want to wait for it to dry. We all saw the experiment. We know how it turns out. We don't need to wait for it to dry. Oh gods. This is a page with some space. This is another hot press page. Alright, so we're gonna make it wet. This page I was using to test out mixing metallic paints in with the color, with regular colors, and seeing how it looks. And it just adds kind of a very soft, fine shimmer effect. Alright, let's try that. Let me add a bit more water. So this is the nickel azo yellow with a droplet of the aquazole. We can see the ringing, the tint rings coming out for sure. Now let's try with another drop of aquazole. I'm pretty sure this is way too much aquazole. This is not going to do anything more, but that's what experimenting is for. Like, it has reached saturation level of effect. Wow, the tint is really spread all the way out now. I guess as you wait for it to dry, it's just gonna get more so. All right, so that's how it works right now with the Mijello Mission Gold mixed with the aquazole, heavy aquazole, very heavy aquazole. Now, let's test it out with just the Mijello Mission Gold by itself on the other side to show the difference. And then maybe also we'll do like corn, the corner. And you can see this one is not moving at all, staying very concentrated. So we keep that dark mustardy concentration because the pigment refuses to move. Compared to here where it wants to disperse, so it becomes the whole colors all disperse just enough that you lose that mass tone mustard, deep mustard, and it becomes more of a the mid-tone. One other thing is maybe I should have did a different wet spot just because the water that came from here as it pushes out may also be affecting this a little, so maybe I should have tested that separately as well. I'll do another corner here just to double check and experiment. Hopefully this paint was not coarse dioxazine plywood that will also have a lot of aquazole mixed in. Okay, so let's try over here. We can see it's wet but not soaking wet. And then we're gonna do another corner here. This is pretty wet as well because all the water is being pushed into that corner from the slight bend in the page. So here we've got this corner where I'm gonna also drop in the core, because the core didn't move that much. I don't think their concentration of aquazole is as heavy as what I did for the azo yellow, where it's like a brush load of paint mixed with a whole drop or whole 2 drops of aquazole. That's a, no, then again, maybe not. This is pretty wet. This is pretty wet. Okay, we could see the wetness really affects how it spreads. This is why science is not done this way. This is not what we call science. So maybe let's try one more time here with less water. We're gonna dab off the excess water. We're gonna let it pool by tilting the page here. All right, now let's try again with a good heavy brush load, but yeah, so it doesn't spread as much when it's like wet but not soaking wet. Where I've got a puddle here. That's why it like exploded. This spread because there was a lot of water, and I suspect some of the aquazole from here, because it was such a heavy concentration, did mix into the water and push it over here. And here, the paper was fairly dry. Like, I wet it with a brush, but just a light sheen of wetness, right? So this spread almost none at all. So clearly, in conclusion, the spread is the aquazole or oxgall, if you prefer to get like a regular like traditional. There's companies, I think, that like Winsor & Newton, I think, that do oxgall, the traditional dispersal agent, that you can add to paints that don't have any, like Asian paints, to make it spread more. If you want the core's super dispersal style, get the synthetic oxgall. And even with the super dispersal agent, you can control how much it spreads based on the wetness of the page, the load of the brush, and your water control. You just need to have better control and understanding of your water and your paint, as well as get comfortable with the difference in behavior with oxgall to be able to master and control that difference. And even a paint like with no dispersal agent, it can spread a lot if you put in a lot of water. We'll do one more right in the middle here. I know this is so ghetto, so jank to be doing this instead of just using a proper new page. I'm sorry. I shouldn't do it like this. So, I've made this not just damp or wet, but like soaking wet. But I don't want it to be super dripping. So we're gonna move some of that out. And then we're gonna try some more of that Mijello yellow. Honestly, even when it's very, very wet, it's not moving a lot. It will spread over time though, like it did with the original page that we did. But yeah, I'm fairly sure that this spread mix here happened partially because the water pooled there, but partially because the Aquazol from this side, some excess got spilled over there. All right, so we see that. And let's go back to the original page once more for review. This whole page is wet, so I'm just going to hold it up for now. Like so. So, I wanted to test the dioxazine violet again, actually. Let me see. There's this page right here. I should have probably done my experiments on this page. All right, let's wet this really quickly, and let's test some of the other colors that that didn't spread so much, because it looks like it did. It looks like it was affected by maybe the dryness of the page, since the Mijello yellow was a lot more explosive, even as like a heavier pigment in our Mijello yellow comparison experiment. All right, so pretty wet. I'm gonna do it one more time to make sure there's no dry spots. Yep, pretty wet. Probably overly wet. That's okay. Now we're gonna try their dioxazine violet here. Yeah, we see here when it's really wet, it's gonna move a lot. Let's get one of the really explosive ones as well to just compare the difference. One that we know really loves to bloom and push. And then let's try like the Viridian green, oh, excuse me, phthalo green. I'm calling it by the name Mijello calls it. And Holbein as well. And you know, that one does move less. It could be more dry though again, so I'm gonna keep re-wetting those pages. I'm gonna try the phthalo blue here. Yeah, they all do that tint ring because of that Aquazol. I want to do like more of a heavier load here. With a heavier load of paint, it does that. And then we already saw how much the paint's gray disperses. Let's try some of the more heavier ones again. Ultramarine. That one's moving less. But again, let me re-wet. And when it's super wet, it does have the rings, but it does seem to move and spread a little less as a heavier one. Let's try their cobalt cerulean. There's cerulean blue chromium, not their cobalt. With some wetness. And yeah, this is one of their heavier ones, and it, even with a lot of water, it's still not moving a lot. So indeed, first conclusion that the pigment type and the heaviness, it does affect things. Yeah, the Mijello yellow, it's not exploding when there's not like huge amounts of water. but it will if you have enough water for it to move around in to play with. So this is the full core page, and we can see they will all move at least somewhat if you give it enough water. All right, pretty good experiment here. Thanks for watching. I hope this was helpful.